Mr. Clerk, you have a motion or something?
Yes, Mr. Chair. So the motion moved by Councillor Columbus, seconded by Roger Geisens, is that the committee adjourns this closed session at 4:03 p.m. and reconvenes in open session.
All in favor? Motion is carried.
And through you, Mr. Chair, I believe we're going to proceed till staff reports and see how much we can get through until about 20 to 5, and we'll take a break that time.
That sounds good. And what would be our first staff report, please?
CSD 1725, feasibility study request for additional funds. Mr. Cridland?
Mr. Cridland, that would be you.
Thank you. Through the chair to county councilors, report CSD 1725 feasibility study request for additional funds is asking for council to approve a contract agreement with the Venton Group, and also unfortunately asking for a budget amendment of $48,000. As background, staff presented staff report CSD 1702 Parks, Facilities and Recreational Master Plan Next Steps on April 4th, 2017 at the CIC meeting. At this meeting, council gave the green light for staff to proceed with the feasibility study. Staff developed the RFP in May. We sent the RFP out in June and closed in early July. Council also received a memo in June before the RFP went out from staff stating that in discussions with the consulting industry that we would not make the original October date with our final report, and it was unrealistic to most of the industry, so the final report would be in the spring of 2018 would be more practical. Closing the RFP, we got 3 firms supply bids, which were all very close in dollar value and had a lot of good detail. The Venton Group was rated as the lowest price proponent at $98,000. Council had earmarked $50,000, and this money came from the Legacy Fund for the purpose of funding this study. In addition to this report tonight, there is an additional memo that was handed out. The memo is a brief, maybe not so brief, but a summary of information that staff can supply to council at this point. I believe some council members may be upset, maybe that's not the word, frustrated, that they'd like to see the full proposal from Venton. However, this can't be shared at this point. Our procurement policy, which staff need to operate under, is clear that staff, it's an administrative task to get the RFP out, to close it. Once it's closed, council will have input. We will want input as far as the scope of the term of reference, the scope, the timelines, and council can be involved in as many steps as they want to going forward. To want council to be assured that putting the RFP together, staff had listened to all their points as far as communication with the public, all user groups, it's all in there. And with that, I'll turn it over for county council for any questions they may have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cridland. Questions? Mayor Luke.
Well, I think we're all disappointed that our $50,000 figure isn't going to do the job. And Mr. Cridland, a couple questions to you. Number one, I would assume if we didn't want to spend a further $98,000, I say further because we did spend 74 grand a couple of years ago on a master plan for recreational in this county. So you can spend a lot of money trying to make a decision. So I would say one option through the chair to Mr. Cridland, that is the RFP set up in such a way that if we wanted to reduce some of the terms of what they're doing or not, or is it pretty well, this is what we asked for and this is the best price and we're yes or no?
I'm looking at Marlene, through the chair, looking at Marlene Watson as well as more experience in this. Marlene, I believe what we've asked for is what we've been given a fair price on and is what we need going forward.
Yes, we had several meetings on developing the scope for the RFP, and it does include everything that you've asked for, looking at all the options, looking at funding sources, so very comprehensive.
Well, Mr. Chair, it sounds to me like either we're going to accept this RFP or we're not going to. There's not going to be any somewhere in the middle, if I can call it that. Anyhow, the other question I have, Mr. Cridland, I'm just reading through your memo now, but my question will relate to a question I had on the report itself. This certainly goes into more detail, your memo. I'm looking at the first page, Mr. Chairman. The recommended proponent of the study will do the following, and he would be Mr. Cridland, will say, first of all, identify the demands of the Norfolk County community. And that's the place to start, I agree. Provide comparable analysis, feasibility, and recommendations for each of the following options, taking into consideration 4 existing facilities, and it specifically points out the Pond Street Adult Community Center, the Talbot Gardens Arena, the Simcoe Recreation Center / Annalise Carr Swimming Pool Facility, along with the arena there, and of course the Culver Street Administration Building. So then I looked down a list of things that are to be considered along these lines of repair, replacement, etc. The hub concept, multi-use recreational facility. The one question I have through you to Mr. Cridland, we have had a lot of ideas come to this podium on recreation needs, and I recall one specifically from Jean Montgomery, which she shared with us the need for a gymnasium, a county gymnasium for basketball, for indoor recreation. And a lot of her rationale for that, Mr. Chair, was the fact that it's getting very difficult to negotiate and to have school gyms, and that they couldn't always be counted on. They were canceled at the last minute due to school functions, etc. Where do we stand here, Mr. Chair, through to Mr. Cridland, on looking at some of the other ideas that have been presented? Not just, I mean, what I'm saying is this feasibility study going to look at everything?
Through the chair, Mayor Luke, you're 100% right. We will look at, especially if when they look at a multi-use facility or the hub, obviously if we keep the same structures, it's very tough to get a gymnasium in, but if we do look at a multi-use, we have listened to our stakeholders and user groups, and the gymnasium space came through loud and clear. It will be included.
My last question, thank you, Mr. Chair, for the time. Mr. Cridland, the Venton Group out of Brantford that's being suggested here, they have had experience in feasibility studies for recreational facilities in the past, I would assume?
Through the chair, that's correct. Extensive experience.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
You're quite welcome. Any further? Councillor Columbus, please. And then Councillor Hall.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the mayor mentioned this gymnasium, and you may recall, I know the mayor's aware of it for sure, that there's a group in Delhi that's proposing a double gym with a walking track around this gym. So are you going to, I noticed in this report, it talks about identify potential suitable locations in the urban boundary of Simcoe. So how does that double gym proposed in Delhi fit into this terms of reference?
Through the chair, when the original master plan was put together, it was looking at basically the 4 big facilities in Simcoe, so this concentrates on that. But it is interesting that the gymnasium proposal in Delhi has came through. I guess the way I put it in my mind, I think it can play into this. However, this will be looking at Simcoe facilities, the replacement of Simcoe facilities.
Okay, I do understand that all these, the pool and Culver Street building, they're all in Simcoe, so I just wondered how that would fit into the equation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Oliver?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I have a quick question, and I think I heard Mr. Cridland touch on it in his introductory remarks, but I just want to go and get something specific on the timing again. I'm concerned, as I know we all are, that this process is taking quite a while, and we have yet to even start it, given all of the excitement and enthusiasm from the community we had back in the spring. Bill, did you say it would be spring 2018, and that's a 3-month period from the 21st of March to the 21st of June. Is there something more specific in the terms of reference that says thou shalt produce this report in its final form by such and such a date?
Through the chair, I think it's approximate times. We were looking at originally the October 2017 date.
Yes.
And in our conversations, it was just unrealistic. So everybody that we talked to would see no problem with probably March of 2018. So we are hoping, and as soon as we get the consultant approved, if that goes, that's first order of business, doing the work backwards from the date that it's passed, and we can give this council a firm number. But I don't see a problem with March at this point.
Okay, thank you for that. And Mr. Chairman, the only other comment I want to make, as everybody else is again, I'm disappointed that this is now becoming an expensive undertaking, and quite honestly, in my opinion at least, will somewhat duplicate work that's already been done. Mayor Luke touched on our recreation master plan, and we all read it in advance again of the discussions last spring, and it does deal with those existing facilities already and whether or not it's feasible to replace or repair or consolidate or whatever it is. And we now, as Councillor Columbus said, we've got this other thing all of a sudden come out of the woodwork regarding Delhi and a possible gymnasium there with walking track, et cetera, et cetera. Quite honestly, I can't see that it would be a wise expenditure of this money at this time, with the time it would require, spring of 2018, to hire an external consultant to do this. What I feel still would be valuable and should be done is someone, and it could simply be done somehow internally by the county, perhaps a volunteer subcommittee from council even could help steer this or guide it. But we go out to each of our communities and we consult with them as to their ideas, what they need, what they want, how they might use a hub facility or whatever. But I just can't, at this point, until I'm convinced by my colleagues around the table, support spending $100,000 to go out and do a lot of what I feel we've done already at this point. We need to get answers, we need to get this decision made, but I personally don't think this is going to be a wise expenditure to try and get us to that decision.
The speakers list is as follows: Councillor Brunton, Height, Black, Sonnenberg, and Geisels.
Thank you, Mr.
And
Chairman.
Columbus now. Okay.
First of all, I'm going to say this, and this is no reflection on the staff, but I guess it reflects on the purchasing policy or whatever, this document. They want $98,000, and yet we can't see what they really want to do. I realize that staff have provided this to us as a summary of what they say they're going to do, but if I'm paying money, I like to know what they gave you. However, the people around this table, or in the future that sit around this table, are going to decide what and where we build. It isn't going to be coming out of a report. We've had a master plan done. So Councillor Oliver raises a good point. Are we going to spend $98,000 now? I guess that's a decision we'll have to make. But we just had a discussion in the other room, which could end up at a lot of money, not to get into any details, and I mean a lot of money. This is another thing that could cost a lot of money down the line. And I don't know if I would have liked to have seen the terms of reference. My recollection, when we sat with the groups that I'm aware of wanted ball fields, they wanted soccer fields. There's a lot of the gymnasium. There's a lot of other things that were mentioned. I don't see them in here. I don't know if this includes a double rink, a single rink, the Culver Street Administration Building on the front page. I didn't know we were looking at that under this proposal. I realize there may be some housing needs down there, but I didn't realize it was included in this proposal. So I'm not sure. Will this, Mr. County Manager or Acting Manager, will this include any type of working drawings? We all know that if we're going to get any type of funding for this, you supposedly have to be shovel ready. Will this lead us there, or is that going to be another step on top of that?
Through the chair, the report that council will see in March we'll have some preliminary drawings. And at that point, what that'll do is pull together any service land, any property that's available. It'll compare a double rink to a single to look at our existing facilities and give a few options on which way to go. And unfortunately, council will have to decide at that point where to go, and then we start a new project on our own or start a new project again, which will be, detailed drawings and where we want to go. There will be some drawings with this, but they'll be conceptual at this point because we don't know if we're going to fix every facility we have. We don't know if we're going to move to a hub. We don't know if we're going to move, obviously to the Annalise Cars, the fairground property. We don't know that. We got to see where the best fit is to get all of our users on board, as well as financially what makes sense. Put a dollar to a lot of this.
Well, again, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I think in the end, irregardless if we do this study, we have a master plan, it's the people around this table that are going to decide the location and what we are going to build. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Councillor Height, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess my question has to do with the financing side of it. It's mentioned here that about $50,000 would be provided from the legacy fund, which is a bit odd considering if you go to page 38 where the timing is impeccable on this one, there's our legacy fund policy right there, and it says, number 3, disbursement of investment earnings of legacy funds, more specifically to provide for funding for capital projects. So really we're going to burn $50K out of our legacy fund on a consultant. Well, but we already have a policy in place that says it's going to capital. How does that even appear in a staff report? If maybe the treasurer could answer that as an option.
Through the chair, before James jumps in, I believe the money from the legacy fund was, I believe there was a $250,000 value that council came back to staff well before this and said, gave it to SLT to decide on projects where it should go. And as an SLT decision, it was $50,000 from that to move forward with whatever we needed for the feasibility study. And the other 200, I believe, went someplace else.
James, please.
Through the chair, I'd hate to correct my acting county manager, but that is true. There was $250,000 that we needed to decide whether we're going to use it for an array of projects. I supplied council with a council report with certain projects to go over and decide from, and $50,000 was decided by council at that time for this study, and then $200,000 was decided to use for roads, pave and shave or something along those lines.
Back to you, Councillor Height.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Finished? Okay. We now go to Councillor Black.
Are you ready for a motion? Because I would like to move the recommendation in the report if I can get a seconder and speak to it.
The only reason I was checking with the clerk, we have 3 other speakers, but he has informed me that you may put your motion on the floor.
Well, if there's a seconder to it, I mean, people could still speak to it and ask questions
Well,
once it's on the floor.
are you going to present the motion first before you ask for a seconder? How can somebody second a motion that they don't know what the motion is?
I just said the recommendation in the report.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was speaking to the clerk. For you, that I apologize.
Yeah, I can read it to you if you'd like.
Yeah.
Nah. The CSD reports 1725 feasibility study request for additional funds be received. Council authorized GM Community Services to execute a contract the amount of $98,000 excluding taxes, the lowest price proponent, VG Architects, Benton Group, as the recreational feasibility study consultant, and that the approved 17 levy supported operating budget be amended from 50 to 98 with funding to be provided from the legacy fund in the amount of 50 and 48 from the tax levy.
A seconder? So we have a motion on the floor, seconded by Mayor Luke.
Speak to it?
Councillor Black.
Well, yeah, I've heard around the table, and I guess I've also been hearing from constituents, not just in Simcoe, throughout Norfolk County, that it's time to get on and do something about
are inadequate, non-functioning facilities. I hear it weekly from people about, our current situation, and it's been like this for a number of years. So if we start to move in a different direction now, then you might as well drop the whole thing and start all over again. I know, yes, the decision is made here, but these things are so large. If you say, okay, the council's going to make the decision, council's going to decide and come up with the ideas, I don't think so. We'll be fighting each other from now until eternity to come up with a solution. That's why we need to get focused, hire this individual who has an expertise to go out, make these assessments, and come back with the valuable information in a concise format so we can make a determination. And of course, when it comes back, if there's other things that need to be taken into consideration, I'm sure we can do that at that time. That this isn't the be-all, end-all, but it is someplace that's going to move the stakes forward to address the inadequacies of the facilities that accommodate the people throughout Norfolk County.
Now, Mr. Clerk, just for clarification, we have a motion on the floor, but before the motion is put on the floor, we had 3 previous speakers. Do they have an opportunity to speak? I asked the clerk, if you don't mind.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes.
We'll go to our speakers list, and that would be you, Councillor Sonnenberg. Then we'll come back to the motion. Thank you. I need all the help I can get. That's why I got married. Councillor Sonnenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will not be supporting this. We have too many irons in the fire right now. We can't afford any more expenditures like this. We have a sewage treatment plant in my ward that's been in the talking stages for 4 years, and there's not a shovel in the ground yet, and every day the price is going to go up. We have an EMS base in Waterford that's been proposed 4 years ago, and every time we talk about it, the price goes up. There's no movement there either, no shovel in the ground. We have arenas to repair. We have swimming pools that need fixing, even before this major hub thing is ever conceived of. And, Mr. Chair, we dealt with an issue in closed session tonight that we can't discuss here, obviously, but it is of major significance, possibly major expenditures. I say this hub notion be put on the back burner for now, and let's deal with the issues at hand. So I can't be supporting this. It's a pipe dream. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Geisens, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have some questions, I guess. Everybody in Norfolk, when we build the hub, is going to pay for it, whether it's Simcoe, Delhi, Fairground, or wherever across all of Norfolk. What I don't see in this report that talks about consultation with the public, but I'm not sure I understand in conjunction with Norfolk County staff taking into consideration geography locations throughout the following methods. And then I go to that bottom, identifying potential suitable locations in the the boundary of Simcoe, or lands outside of the urban boundary of Simcoe in close proximity designated and zoned appropriately. Sorry. I'm a little, theoretically, I can't support this, and I won't support it. I still think that Councillor Oliver has a good idea. I don't see us doing this unless the feds and the province come up with some big cash, which I don't see them doing because they're all in the red. I think what we need to do is to talk about, at least go see all of the citizens throughout Norfolk, is what I'm trying to say. And right now, I don't know. We're saying it's Simcoe. Well, if you look at the closest, the middle of the county, we should be building this hub I guess, in Delhi, because if you look at it, it's fairly close. You go to Houghton Center and see how far that is to get to Simcoe. It's about a drive from Simcoe to Brantford. So maybe we could use their hub. Theoretically, I can't support it at this time without finding out what the residents of Norfolk County want and need. I agree with what Councillor Sonnenberg has said. We have a lot of things that are on our plate, I guess, right now, and I don't know if we have the money to do it at this time. And until somebody comes along and says, well, you need to do this and you need to do that, and we're going to fund it, no, I won't support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Columbus, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It was mentioned that we have inadequate facilities, and I do agree that they should be improved. And I think we should be dealing with these one at a time, and I've got a real hard time getting my mind around this hub. And, you know, when you look, the Simcoe Adult Senior Center, we had all kinds of emails and a petition signed by the seniors. They don't want to be part of a hub on the outside of town. They've told us quite openly that they want to be in the urban area of the Simcoe. Talbot Gardens, one at a time. I think we should just get right into fixing that facility. It still looks to me like a decent building, and I think we should get at it and not hold it up. Not hold it up for a proposed hub that's going to take years to build. The swimming pool, I agree. We should be looking at a new facility to accommodate our swimmers. And I agree that that should be taking place ASAP. The Culver Street building, again, from what we heard tonight in our discussions, you know, this could all fit into the equation. So I'm not going to support this recommendation that's on the floor. Thank you.
Speaking to the motion that is on the floor, Councillor Height, I have you, Mayor Luke.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I find, you know, all of this discussion started from our Parks and Rec and Master Plan. Okay, we probably spent $150,000 on consultant fees. We had one meeting, which was promptly hijacked by this community hub idea. And the rest of that report still gathers dust. And I've had it since 2015. The only thing we've discussed out of that entire plan is a community hub. Never mind the parks and some of the rural settings or in some of our other urban settings. Like, are we just going to waste $98,000 and it comes back to here and we say, oh, well, we can't afford it? Because we do, as Councillor Sonnenberg mentioned and the other councillors, we have a lot of balls in the air right now that we'll need to deal with. I don't find this a pressing matter for me, and I don't even see why it came forward now as opposed to the budget talks. I think during the budget talks, this council is going to have some tough decisions to make, and this might be one of the ones that just doesn't move forward. And so I won't be supporting it at this time. I'd like to see it come back during the budget, Mr. Chair, and from there we can see what we can hack and slash and try to work something out. Thank you.
Mayor Luke.
Well, Mr. Chair, I can tell you why it's coming forward right now. Because this council, 4 or 5 months ago, with a numerous 3.5 hours of deputations, after that evening, the majority of this council, and I don't know the count, whether it was a 5-4 or 8-1, I don't know, it doesn't matter. It was the direction of this council to have staff bring this forward as the next step in trying to determine what our future recreation plans will be for this county. That's nothing new. This has been in the works for a long time. I agree that we did not, as a council, act on the master plan that was brought here some 2 or 3 summers ago, 17, 15, 2 summers ago. Maybe 3. I still have the binder on my shelf. So that's why it's here. Whether you agree with it or not, that's up to the individual. But that's why it's here. This came out of a meeting, I believe, around April or May. I don't remember. Maybe a little earlier than that. So it's here, and we have to deal with it. It seems to me Mr. Chair, that the interpretation that many around this table, and again, I say this respectfully, but it seems to me from listening to my colleagues that this seems to be interpreted as a move towards an endorsement of a hub concept. Doesn't say that at all. This report does not say anything about endorsing a hub. That this county directs staff to investigate the feasibility of a new multi-use recreational facility. There was $5.4 million in a capital budget, been there for years, to upgrade the pool slash swimming pool slash arena, and to add on, I believe there was a number of things to be added on there, to be considered. So that's where that's coming from. That's no new surprise to anybody around this table. Shouldn't be. It's in the capital budget forecast for years. Including the concept of a community hub, that shouldn't be a shock to anybody around here if you were here at those deputations. I don't know if we're going to build a community hub. I have no idea. I'm a long ways from deciding that. I do know that it is one concept open to me in investigating the options. The Adult Community Center, how long, Councillor Black? You don't have to answer this, obviously, but we've been talking about that for 15 years.
Or more. No more than that.
Culver Street Administration Building, well, I think we know that the room is tight down there, and that was to be included in this study to see what could happen should we come to some sort of a larger facility, and our administration staff would be there and there would be savings. So, you know, I agree with some of the comments here about where's the money coming from. A lot of balls up in the air right now that we've got up there. Oh, absolutely. How many more years are we going to delay looking at replacing some of this aging infrastructure in our recreation? I think that the Talbot Gardens Arena is on here because suddenly we came up with the unfortunate situation of having to possibly close that, or certainly close it to spectators, and some remedial work is being done there. Thank goodness we're lucky to keep the public allowing to at least sit, not have to watch the activities there. So none of this, as it's laid out here, Mr. Chair, is a surprise to me. What is a surprise to me is a $100,000 price to take, as someone has said, a $72,000 recreation study done a few years ago by Mr. Galloway, one of the premier consultants in this province for recreation, to take that and look at a number of options that this council consider. And I hope if we do that, we can plan, Mr. Chair, down the road. I'm not saying we have to start something next spring or next summer, but at least put a plan in place for the next 2 to 10 years or something, because when the next breakdown comes at the recreation pool, and we're going to be asked to spend another $500,000 or more, the griping is going to start, and it's time for a new pool. It's time to start planning now for a new pool. We have to somehow have somebody come forward to answer the questions: repair or replace? Multi-purpose new center could be phased, yes or no? Hub concept, yes or no? And it'll be up to this council to make that decision. But I don't have the type of information and cost figures, estimates in front of me to even know where to start. People say to me almost every week, how are we coming with the hub? Are we going to have a new hub? New hub? We're not even close to answering that question, are we going to have a new hub? Not even close, at least I'm not. There may be some here that are. Because before I can commit to that type of expenditure, I got to know who's going to pay for it and what impact it's going to have on all this county, Mr. Chair. I don't know if this is not supported, this 100,000, so be it. It's not the end of the world. I think what we better do is kind of regroup and figure out how we're going to get to the point where we're going to make a decision on where we're going, because we got a 45-year-old swimming pool, 46-year-old swimming pool. We got arena down there that's 40-some years old. It's time to do some upgrading, or repairing, or replacing, in whatever form, I don't know. So I'm a little surprised that people are seeing this as the decision in supporting this consultant, Mr. Chair, that this is going to be what's going to cause a community hub to happen. I don't know that. I know one thing, we need to have somebody go out there and come and give us the options, whoever that is and however much it costs. I'm not going to fight that tonight, but we told the folks that came here that we will do a consultant study. We know in our meetings with Ava Salter from the ministry that that is a requirement for provincial and federal funding, and we don't have that in place. This would be one piece of the pie, one piece of the puzzle, pardon me, not all of it. But boy, we better start having a look at some of these facilities that are falling apart and figure out, and we may not start replacing them or doing something for 5 years, but we better start doing it now, the planning, and make a decision, for God's sakes. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Brunton?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've heard a lot tonight here and previously, and I think Councillor Sonnenberg twigged a few things in my mind, that we have a lot of projects on the plate that we haven't even started yet, and I'm concerned about that. One that really twigs me is the Dingle Creek drain. I think that's up over $3.5 million last I heard. We haven't even started it. Done some engineering, but it seems to be dragging along. Fire halls we talk about. A few weeks from now, we're going to be dealing with a whole pile of capital again. How many of those are going to take forever to get implemented? Maybe we should just put a halt to things till we catch up with some of this work. I don't want to see this report thrown out the window, but I think we need a little more time before we jump at it. I'm not saying, and maybe we won't jump at it, but Mayor Luke, you've raised a lot of good points. We have aging facilities. I feel I have a pretty good handle because I use some of those facilities. And I've listened around this table, and I've listened to staff, what's wrong with them. But I don't think it's all as bad as it's made out to be. Councillor Columbus made a good point. Let's get on and fix Talbot. God almighty, are we going to tear that building down? If that engineer shows up here and tells me that we should tear it down, I'll agree with him, but I don't see that happening. I would like to see this deferred a little while till we see what happens with a few of these other major decisions we're going to have to make, because they are going to be costly. And who knows what's coming in water and sewer. New water tower or standpipe in Dover, I don't know what we're going to put down there. Sewage treatment plant in Waterford. Geez, these things are in the millions. And we don't have the money. I mean, that's very obvious. We talked about that. It's been on the news. It's been everywhere. So I don't know if we can, Mr. County Manager, could we wait till, we're going to do capital in October? Could we wait with this report until October and deal with it then?
Through the chair, I mean, council has that option. I would want to check with procurement staff as early as tomorrow, just on how or what, if we're locked into this RFP. I don't think we are, but I'd have to find that out before we move forward.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I, if possible, I like to defer it. There's too many unknowns and too many intertwining possibilities with other facilities, so I don't think now is the time to jump right at it. I think if we could have a little more time to make that decision, it would work a little better. Anyway, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Brunton, I think deferral would take precedent, and you can prepare your motion if you wish to put it as a deferral. After I allow Councillor Oliver to speak, I'll come back to you. You can decide what you want to do. Councillor Oliver.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chairman. I don't have a great deal more to say. A lot of good points have been raised. I listened very carefully to Mayor Luke's comments, and and really appreciated what he said, and all of what he said is absolutely true. I still don't think I'm going to be able to support this recommendation, but it's not for the reasons that have been spoken around the table. I just don't feel this expenditure of $100,000 is going to advance us significantly in either area, either in support of the community hub concept or not. I do feel still we need to do some consultation out in the community, not just here in Simcoe, of course, but all across the county. And should this motion fail, then I'll put forward a further recommendation that we establish a special subcommittee of council, if we can legally do it, to lead a consultation process this fall in those communities to see how people feel about the options that are presented to them, both financially and in terms of usage. But I'm sorry, but I still think delaying this process, and that's what this will do, it'll delay it another 6 or 7 or 8 months until this study's given to us, then we have to analyze it, then we have to go ahead and decide what to do with it. That's not going to advance the process, Mr. Chairman, and if it had stayed at the budget somehow that we approved last spring, then I probably would have agreed, but now that it's doubled and it's going to take 6 months longer at least than we were told it would in the spring, I just can't support it. So I'll see what happens, Mr. Chairman. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to go to Councillor Brunton, and I believe he's going to put on deferral. Before I go back to the council after deferral, Mr. Cridlin has asked to speak. So, Mr. Brunton, you now have the floor.
I'd like to ask Mr. Cridlin, when is the capital budget's coming forward in October?
Through the chair, that's correct.
And that's, what, 6 weeks, 7 weeks away? Is that too much of a delay if we defer this? That's what I guess I'm asking.
I guess through the chair, what I would say is, to your answer, I mean, this council reigns supreme over staff. If they want to go the 6 weeks, I mean, we'll have to live with the 6 weeks.
Well, I'll make a motion to defer this to the capital budget. Plain and simple.
I think that motion is fair, and as I said before I go to speak to council, Mr. Cridlin, you wish to make a comment, and then council will have the right to speak to the deferral.
Through the chair, I guess my only comment is reflection on Mayor Luke's. In April, when we were given the go-ahead to move to the feasibility study, and staff went through the work to do it, we also had $50,000 that was put in the budget to carry forward. If we did not run into this budget amendment, we would have been into this RFP proposal now. Public consulting would be going on. This thing would be running. I'm sure of it, because the only reason we had to bring it back tonight was it was a budget amendment. Council break, complicated things a little bit. So I don't know what to say. I guess it's disappointing at staff's end to get this far, but I do understand it's council's decision, and it is double of what we thought. I guess the only other thing I can add is there's been some reflection on Fred Galloway's master plan, which was more or less a general concepts theory sort of thing. This drills down to exact properties, in-depth public consulting, looking at the facilities, is it service, planning issues, drawings. There's much more work to this than there was in the master plan. So I guess with that, it's a council decision, and I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. And before the motion, the clerk has just informed me that it's really not a motion. Councillor Brunton has put forth a motion, but no seconder as of yet. Councillor Height has seconded the motion. We now have a motion. Speaking to the motion, Councillor Height.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could you read or have the clerk read that resolution for us? Because I believe it's going under the capital budgets. Shouldn't it be under operating? Because it's being funded from the levy and the reserve. It should go into the operating, not the capital. Capital is not a place to burn money for consulting fees.
Through you, Mr. Chair, you are correct about your assessment of operational or capital, but regardless, you could refer any matter that you wanted to the capital budget deliberations, even if it isn't technically. If you wanted to deal with something at the capital budget deliberations, it would definitely be within your power. And the motion is just that staff report CSD 1725 be deferred to the capital budget deliberations.
I know that we've done this before previously, but didn't the rest of them go into operating? 'Cause I think that's the wrong spot, to be honest.
We'll look over at our treasurer. Mr. Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll answer the budget question. The consulting fees historically have been placed in different areas over the last X amount of years. In the past, if there's a consultant directly related to a capital project, we'll stick it in the capital plan because it's part of that expense. However, if it's a consultant that's sort of general in nature, related to, you can't really tie it to a specific capital plan, then yes, that will be part of the operating budget.
Are you all right with that? Councilor Brunton?
I do not, I would like it to go to the capital because it's only a few weeks away. If we do the operating, that won't be till into January, and I don't want to wait that long. I think we should know in 6 or 7 weeks where some of these other, I use the word other ideas that we threw around here tonight might fall into place a little better. And it gives us just a little more time to see what staff come back with, even possibly next week. That's all. Anyways, that's my position.
Thank you.
I stand by the motion.
Stand by the motion. Mr. Johnson, you wish to make a comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can I suggest that we defer to perhaps another council and committee or council meeting rather than having it as part of the capital budget? It would break it up a little bit better, and I think we'd be able to concentrate on the capital components during that meeting rather than having this added to that agenda.
That would have to be a request of the mover and seconder. So again, your request is that you're asking them to change their motion to?
Oh, thank you. Rather than linking it with our capital budget agenda for that day, perhaps we can add it to an agenda of another council or a CIC meeting within around the same time.
If I may,
You
Mr.
now have
Chair?
the floor.
No, I don't want that. I think there's a lot of irons in the fire here. And I mean, another council meeting could be next week, and I'm not sure we'll have all the answers we need next week. We put some onus on you and staff a few minutes ago to come up with some ideas, and I'd like to see, I think the capital would be the area where we will, by that time, have an idea what we want to do, I hope. Operating is too far off. And again, the concept is good. The report is going to tell us, I think, some good information, but it's a case of where some of these other things are going to fall in place. So I'll leave my motion on the floor.
The motion is left as it is on the floor. I'm going to ask the clerk to read the motion, and then we are going to vote on the motion. It'll either pass or fail.
That staff report CSD 1725 be deferred to the capital budget deliberations. Sorry.
All in favor of the motion that's on the floor? I count 3. Those opposed? The motion is lost. Where do we go now? The original motion. And what is, you better read it.
That report, CSD 1725, feasibility study request for additional funds be received as information, and that council authorizes the general manager, community services, to execute a contract in the amount of $98,000 excluding taxes with the lowest price proponent to VG Architects, the Venti Group Ltd, as the recreational feasibility study consultants, and further that the approved 2017 levy-supported operating budget be amended from $50,000 to $98,000, with funding to be provided from the legacy fund in the amount of $50,000 and $48,000 from the tax levy.
You've heard the motion. Those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is lost. Councilor Oliver.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to try a further motion, and that would be that a subcommittee of council be appointed to undertake a consultation process in the fall of 2017 in all 5 urban areas, centers of our county, around the feasibility of a new recreational community hub, and also upgrades and repairs to existing recreational facilities. I know that's a mouthful, and I apologize for that, but I think that is the one important part of this puzzle that has not yet been addressed, and several of my colleagues have expressed concerns about it. I think until we do that, and who better to do it than ourselves, quite frankly, I think we're going to continue to spin our wheels. So if there's a seconder for that motion, we'll see if that carries any support.
Okay, we have the motion by Councillor Oliver. Before it gets on the floor, it has to have a seconder. Do I have a seconder to the motion? Councillor Height has seconded the motion. It is now on the floor for discussion. Councillor Black first, followed by Councillor Brunton.
Well, I won't support it. We are spinning our wheels by, if we do support this, we're spinning our wheels. We've been spinning our wheels for 18 years. The whole idea of repairing the recreation complex began in Simcoe days. And it's floundered ever since. Fix, patch, constantly getting people complaining about that facility. We have gone to the public, I don't know how many times, and this has also been part of a master plan, at least the second master plan, if not the third master plan, and each time we have gone to the public. And the public comes here from all over Norfolk County. The emails that we receive are from all over Norfolk County. You know, I get the impression that my fellow colleagues are thinking that, oh, well, this is just a Simcoe thing. You know, we need to go to the rest of the county and ask them what's going on. We have, and we've heard loud and clear from the rest of the people throughout Norfolk County that are now going to other facilities outside of Norfolk County because this one down here is not adequate and hasn't been adequate for many years. We've consulted them many times. They've been here. There have been public meetings. So you're talking about spinning your wheels, that's exactly what we're going to be doing. We're taking a step backwards if we support this motion, and I know it will be supported. But it's going backwards, and mark my words, the public will be heard. They'll be coming here and doing more deputations and asking us, what the heck are you doing? We thought you